Hello, welcome to Module 4, the Gut Skin Detox Connection. I am so excited to share this with you guys because this is really where I think it all is. So pay attention because this is where you can really optimize your health and understand the root cause of diseases and how to manage it. Okay. All right. So I want to bring this back because this here demonstrates the things that are causing harm to our body, causing dysfunction to our body. These are the root causes with epigenetic expression. And so I had mentioned, if you were listening to my webinar, you would see that there are three main lifestyle and environmental factors that really get us sick, right? Number one factor is going to be the toxic burden. The toxic burden comes from leaky gut, inflammation from the gut, anything that comes from the gut that can cause inflammation. So dysbiosis, yeast overgrowth, bacteria overgrowth, hidden infection that you may not know from like a previous food poisoning that you had years ago that could still be lingering around. It's just, you just didn't know that they're still there. Environmental facts, environmental toxins, pesticides, insecticides, right? Medications, heavy metals, mold, and among other things like phthalates and parabens, plastics, and obesogens and endocrine disruptors. I can't stop because those are all the things that we're exposed to every single day. I mean, it is estimated that every woman who use like conventional makeup, hair care products, and things that they use to on their daily skin routine and self-care routine are exposed to over 200 different chemicals a day before they walk out the door. And that's just in the morning routine. So I really want you to understand this because of how toxic our environment is. And I'm not trying to do that to instill fear, but it's awareness, right? So if you are aware that these things are the main things that are getting us sick, you can start to look at strategies and practices to avoid them, right? You can also look at how to mitigate these toxicity that we're exposed to every day, because the goal is optimizing your system, your detox system, your body to a point where exposing to these things don't really cause dysfunctions because your body's strong enough and healthy enough to manage them. And then the third source of toxic burden is hidden infections, right? So bacteria. We have bacteria that are naturally part of our ecosystem, our flora, our skin, our lungs, our gut flora, gut flora and mouth flora are all critical floras that we have to take care of, but they're in our blood, they're everywhere. So if you have a body that is favorable to their growth, then these bacteria will overgrow, right? And then we deal with viruses. When we have viruses, any viral infection you've had in the past, they are still in your system. It is our immune system that suppress them at very low number where they don't really cause problem. And then they go into a dormant state, right? Epstein-Barr, over 200 different strains of Epstein-Barr virus out there. And all of them cause everything from mono to cancer to lymphoma. It's a type of your immune cell cancer. So they cause a wide range of diseases, chronic fatigue, right? So these are viruses that you need to be aware that when you have a decrease in your immune system, they are going to replicate. And so your viral load, your overall viral load can contribute to the overall toxic burden because these viruses, they kill our cells, and they replicate and they produce waste products that is toxic to us, right? And then there is fungal. So there's yeast, there's mold, there's fungus infection that if you live in certain areas, especially in the desert, you're just exposed to them through the lungs. So these things are things that we're just exposed to that our body and our immune system is so good at managing for us. But as these toxic burden build up over time, your immune system gets weakened. If you don't get good sleep, or if you're stressed, right? If you don't get enough nutrients, guess what? Your body will not be able to be in a state where it can help you deal with these toxic burden. So, and then that brings us to our second factor, which is deficiency. So I talked about nutrient deficiencies, right? But there's also movement and fitness deficiency. There's some deficiency of sunlight that can interfere with the way neurotransmitters are produced in our system. Our hormones are they don't get produced properly if you don't get exposure to the sun, if you don't get the right nutrients into your system, and if you don't sleep at the right time or getting good quality deep sleep. So that's why sleep, nutrition, right, lifestyle is so important in how our body can stay strong. And then lastly, stress. Stress is now really widely known as a silent killer, just like chronic inflammation is, right? But now stress, there's physical, mental, and emotional stress, right? But then there's that biochemical stress, which comes from your toxic burden. So when you have these combination together, guess what? Your body will not have what it takes to manage the toxins and the waste and all the function that it has to manage to keep you alive and well, right? So this is when you have these factors, when they interact with your genetics, your genes that you're born with, you can manifest different dysfunctions that then manifest to different symptoms and diseases and diagnosis. So genetics doesn't cause disease, right? It's the environment that you're exposed to that turns on disease-causing genes. And if you give if you give your body the right nutrients, the right lifestyle, and decrease your toxic burden or detoxing, guess what? Your genes will turn on health-promoting genes. And then you will then be able to address all of the dysfunctions that happen from a high toxic burden. So when you have a high toxic burden with nutrient deficiencies and stressors going on, what's going to happen is that you're going to end up with chronic inflammation. Acute inflammation is supposed to happen. It's what helps us heal our wounds. It's what helps us deal with, acute infections. But long-term chronic infections, anything that lasts more than 6 weeks, depending on certain diseases, some is 6 weeks, some is 3 months, some is 6 months. But in general, you don't want it lasting more than a couple of weeks, right? Because once these chronic inflammation, these are responses from your immune system, that's what makes us feel bad. That's what makes us overreact to the food we eat. That's what makes us have aches and pain because we think that there is something is invading our system, something is harming us. And so as a natural, appropriate response, your immune system is going to cause inflammation. But because you deal with them for so long, then the inflammation itself is now causing chronic diseases and symptoms. You can have cellular miscommunication, right? This is where your body doesn't listen to each other anymore. Your brain doesn't listen to your gut, or it's sending abnormal signals that is causing the brain to be inflamed, or the immune cells, they overactivate each other, right? That's a miscommunication. And then you can have hormone miscommunication. When you have so much chronic inflammation at the cellular level, the cells change shape. The cells no longer can take in nutrients like it's supposed to, and it can't release or let go of toxins. The cell membranes become so rigid from the inflammation that the fluidity and the plasticity that it has isn't there anymore to allow these things to happen naturally. So now you have and then now you have hormones that come by and try to bind to the cell. The cell's like, I'm busy, I'm dealing with something, I'm stressed out, I can't listen. And so it will literally stop the function of your hormones. Not because you don't have enough hormones, right? You can have low hormone production, but the function of the hormone matters when that hormone binds to the cell. So that's important to know, right? And then the mitochondrial dysfunction. So the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. This is where you produce cellular energy. Now, different organs have different types of cells, and different types of cells require different amount of energy. So the heart requires a lot of energy. So it has about 5,000 mitochondria per cell, right? And then the liver requires about 2,000 to 3,000 mitochondria for it to function with detoxing, producing hormones, processing cholesterol, making protein. I mean, the liver has over 500 different functions. Now, the most important function with the liver is at night when you're in deep sleep, you go into detox because the liver has to detox between 1 to 3 a.m. And we're going to go into that. But it's important to know so you can actually learn how to adjust your lifestyle to match with what your body need, which then will optimize your system in dealing with toxic burden. So you can see here on the right is a bucket. This is my toxic bucket. Imagine this is your body. When this bucket overflows, right? Your toxic burden gets higher and higher every year, not because of aging, but because of just your exposure through spending more time here on Earth. You're getting a higher toxic burden, which eventually will manifest into symptoms like high or low blood pressure, digestive problems, weight loss resistance, or sometimes weight gain problems, dizziness, lightheadedness, inability to handle stress, getting really emotional or short with people, irritability, exertional malaise. You climb up a flight of stairs and you're out of breath, right? Brain fog, fatigue, headaches, migraines, hormone dysregulation, trouble sleeping, either falling asleep or staying asleep. There's different causes to that, but it's because of your toxic burden regardless. Depression and mood changes, anxiety, mood swings, all come from your toxic burden. But it comes from your toxic burden because of the inflammation that your body's dealing with and its inability to fix itself because of the miscommunication, right? Temperature dysregulation, muscle, joint pain, skin issues, eczema, psoriasis, acne, or hives and rash. Those are all signs that your body's having issues with detoxing. So I want to spend a little bit on sharing with you guys, how does our body detox? And if we follow the way our system detox, how are we going to be able to use it in order to help us revive our system? And the gut is very important in this because every cell pretty much produce waste product, and then it will drain its waste product into the organ that it's in. Well, the organ it's in and the tissue around it has to drain those toxins somewhere. Well, it drains it into your lymphatic system. So this is your lymphatic system. I think of it as your waste or sewage system because it drains toxins from your head. And the brain doesn't have a lymphatic system, but it drains via shrinking by 40% during deep sleep, especially deep sleep between 11 to 3 a.m. So optimal bedtime is going to be 10 o'clock. And we're not going to be able to do that all the time. But when you are dealing with health issues, that's what you need to do. You need to go to sleep early so that your lymphatic system drains, your brain drains. And then these lymphatic system will drain into the liver via this big cisterna chyli right here. This is where our lymphatic system dump all the waste into the liver, and then the liver breaks them down. The liver has a lot of different jobs in breaking down all the toxins that we're exposed to. And some toxins can come from external, but a lot of toxins come from within our system. So it's not just environmental toxins that we're dealing with. It's the stuff that our body's breaking down that is also toxic to us, like from oxidative stress, right? We produce urine and urea. And if you have hidden infections, bacteria, parasites, they produce urea. And on those urea, when you don't get rid of them properly, guess what? They build up in your system and they cause a lot of inflammation and damages to our tissue. So when your liver breaks down these toxins, they will be released into the gut via bile production. Now, bile has another function of breaking down fat, emulsify fat so that we can absorb the fat. But really, bile is also for us to remove toxins from our liver. And then you could see here, it removes it through this duct. Well, sometimes you could have parasites or scarring or inflammation that scars the system that then narrows this duct down to where you can't effectively drain the bile from the liver. And that can cause backup of toxins too, right? But sometimes, so that's one point there, but sometimes when you drain the toxins into the gut and the gut can't excrete or eliminate the toxins that are coming from the bile, especially like if you have chronic constipation. Chronic constipation in conventional medicine is you don't have bowel movements for days, right? In functional medicine, you look at function. If you're not having 1 to 2 bowel movements a day in Western population, that we usually just have one. But if you eat a lot of fiber and enough uh, um, of the right food, you're going to be able to have more bowel movements. But sometimes just one is good, minimum of 1 per day. So if you're not eliminating waste, right, you're going to reabsorb a lot of the toxins that are sitting in your gut. But it doesn't have to be just constipation. You can have leaky gut that these toxins will pretty much go back into your bloodstream because you have damages to your intestinal wall. Now, what can cause damages to these intestinal walls is wheat, gluten. It's not that they are they can cause issues to us by itself, but because when we're dealing with other stuff and we're eating and consuming other food that has high pesticides from glyphosate, we're going to have a very weak gut lining. And then the thing is, wheat is not a problem by itself. It's the over consumption of wheat. We are eating way too much wheat and starches, and that's why it's a problem. Hidden infections, parasites, bacteria, yeast overgrowth, they can all cause leaky gut, which is like microscopic damages to your gut lining, also known as increased intestinal permeability, right? So now you could see that there's a lot of things that can happen along the way of us trying to drain all the toxins from our body till the time it leaves the system. But there's one more component you need to understand or know about, is that the liver has 2 phases of breaking down toxins. And you can see here, the source of exotoxins is environmental toxicants, mycotoxins, heavy metal, drugs, and then the endotoxins, which come from within us, from our cells, which are end products of metabolism, or bacterial endotoxins that live in our gut. And then, so that's why the gut is so critical. But pretty much once these toxins get into the liver, it goes through phase 1 transformation. This is where oxidation, reductions, these are biochemistry reactions, hydrolysis, hydration, dehalogenation, that basically have to break that compound down to an intermediate so that the liver can get rid of it. Well, in that process, if you look at the supportive nutrients, you need B vitamins, you need vitamin C, E, zinc, selenium, magnesium, glutathione, NAC, ALA, bioflavonoids, and polyphenols. These all come from our food. This is why it's so important that we eat a diverse diet that emphasize plant-based, because the more variety you eat, the more different nutrients you get, right? Now, unfortunately, after phase 1, these intermediate byproducts are actually usually more toxic than the original compound itself. So you now have to go through phase 2, conjugation. So now the liver has to add different compounds to it to neutralize these intermediates, which are usually still fat soluble, meaning that you can't get it out of your system until you make it water soluble. And so that's why phase 2 is so important. And phase 2 will do sulfation, glucuronidation, glutathione conjugation, amino acid conjugation, acetylation, and methylation. Most of you may have heard of methylation. That's the process where you add a methyl group to the toxin. And there's a lot of us, about 40 to 50% in the population, has an MTHFR mutation that doesn't allow us to methylate very well. And this is where you can have a lot of chronic disease manifestation as a result, because you cannot detox well, right? And so these people who have these mutations, you can actually take methylated B complex, but also increase your nutrient intake from plant-based foods, The list is here. I'm not going to go over it, but pretty much almost the same nutrients, but it may even require more nutrients for this phase 2 to happen. Once this phase 2 happens, it neutralizes that intermediate byproduct, making it water soluble. It is no longer as toxic to us. And now it can be passed through the stool and through bioproduction. And then some of it can go through the kidneys, through the serum. So we just absorb things back into our bloodstream, and then it travels to the kidneys, and then you can pass some of the toxins out through the urine. Usually a lot of toxins are detoxed through the liver first, but you can see the kidneys, if you have an overwhelming amount of toxins coming from the liver through the kidneys is very delicate in that it has a lot of small blood vessels. And these blood vessels can get damaged from these toxins that we're putting out. When we have too much of these toxins, that's when our kidneys can get damaged. Okay. And then you go through phase 3 is the elimination process. But there's 2 more ways that we can detox, which is sweating through our skin, through our sweat glands, and then our lungs. We can actually breathe out or exhale out toxins that are gases, right? So in the gut, we actually have bacteria, and sometimes people who have gut issues, they have bacterial overgrowth that produces hydrogen gas, methane gas, and hydrogen sulfide gas. And these are all very toxic gas. And guess what? It gets absorbed into our system and it leaves through the lungs. This is where you can get lung inflammation. It doesn't manifest as much, but depends on how sick you are, how toxic you are. It really can damage the lungs. And this is, so toxins that leave through the skin, guess what? If the toxins are lodging in your skin, in your sweat glands, and it can't leave and it gets built up over time, now you have a problem where toxins are changing the shape of your tissue, because now you have a toxin tagging onto a cell or a tissue, and your immune system, travel around and say, this doesn't look like our tissue anymore. It has something hanging off of it. Well, this is where your immune system starts to attack these tissue that are basically laced with all of these toxins. And that's how you develop eczema. This is how you can develop psoriasis, skin issues, right? And if your liver is overwhelmed with toxins, it'll manifest as hives. It will manifest as acne, right? You can't get rid of the toxins. It will go somewhere and it will try to leave your system in any possible way. So this is how you need to understand your system work as a manifestation of toxic burden. Like, this is what's happening in our system that leads to a lot of dysfunctions. So I put this here so that you could see, this is my 5 steps to pretty much reverse almost any chronic diseases and chronic symptoms. What you guys are experiencing right now in this program is actually the first step, which is working on the gut. We detox the gut. So once you detox the gut and you're eliminating waste properly, you've decreased the toxic burden from the food you're consuming. And by feeding your body like clean food, guess what? It's feeding the good population of bacteria in your gut. So you're rebuilding your gut microbiome. And in that process, you're just decreasing inflammation, you're healing your gut, and you're decreasing toxin flow into your liver. Now, some of you will do very well after we look at your stool test, and then I'm going to give you a recommendation on a very basic detox protocol that's going to help you clean out the gut. But let's say you have very severe symptoms, right? You have symptoms that are not so easy to fix with just the gut. Then you're going to be able to, well, what I do is I detox up higher, going into the liver and cleaning out the bile duct so that the liver can drain better into the gut, so you can eliminate waste better. And in this process, you're going to alleviate a lot of the toxins that are overflowing into your skin, your kidneys, and your lungs. And then after the liver and bile ducts, I usually, pretty much in patients that are having severe symptoms, I would go even further into the lymphatic system and help clean out the lymphatic system. Now, in the liver phase, I mostly treat parasites because they usually are the reasons why you have a lot of toxic burden. And if you don't treat them, you're just not going to get better. Like you can, but it will relapse. You're going to have symptoms that come back later, months later, maybe a year or two later, but they will come back if you have parasites. And the lymphatic system, I continue to treat parasites, but I also use this to clear out your lymphatic system from viruses that are dormant in the lymphatic system or hiding there. You also can clean out chemicals and radiation. And if people have mold, this is where I detox the mold toxicity. And then once you clear out the lymphatic system, now your system is really able to clean up, right? Now you're draining properly. Now you can even go further into your organs and tissues and detox from environmental toxins, endocrine disruptors, heavy metals, drugs that are stuck in your system. What else? And yeah, pretty much all the environmental toxins are in this phase. And then once your organs and tissues are drained, you can now go even deeper into cellular detox. And this is for really people that are really toxic and really sick, like autoimmune disease, definitely have to go into cellular detox. But most people, they go up to stage 2 or 3, and then some will go into organs, and then a few would go into cellular detox. And I also have this traditional Chinese medicine body clock because I want to show you how you can optimize your detox pathway and help it out by going to sleep at the right time. If you have a lot of stress, okay, if you are dealing with a lot of stressors in your life, you really want to go to bed really early around 9 o'clock because this is a time you can let your triple burner, which are your adrenals, your thyroid hormones, and your sex hormones. So if you have any issues with hormone production, you need to go to sleep really early, around 9 o'clock. And then at 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., this is when your gallbladder has the most help from the body because everything else kind of shut down and the gallbladder become most active. And this is where you can start to help the gallbladder to detox. This is where you can go through cellular repair. You release bile, right? And then you rebuild blood cells, red blood cells. And then if you can go to sleep by 10 o'clock, because I think that's more ideal and more feasible for most of us, that would be good too, okay? And then from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m., this is when your liver is most active in its detox function. This is when your brain starts to really shrink because you're going into deeper sleep. And then this is where you detox the blood, you rest, recovery. This is when the body heals. Is when you're detoxing, everything shut down. You don't have to think. There's a lot of resources now available for recovery and detoxing. And then from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. is the lung. So I mentioned that the lung also detoxes. And so this is the time that it would detox. Now, what if you go to bed and you wake up between 1 to 3 a.m. or 3 a.m. to 5? Well, that is because those organs and their meridians, they have problem with detoxing. So that is why you even need to sleep more and support your system nutritionally and sometimes targeted supplements to help you detox better. And usually your system will recover and you will be able to have better sleep. That is it for this module. I know it's short, but I think this is so important and I think it's enough. If you guys understand this module, you guys have really learned the secret to being healthy, staying young, and access to thriving. All right, thank you so much. I will see you in the next module.